Hi, welcome to a news episode of Sports Talk Central. I'm your host, Deep Mahmood, with my normal co-host Hunter, and today it's going to be basically a baseball day. So basically, before we talk about the trade deadline, because it was very quiet until the last 2-3 hours or so. And I'm sure Hunter, as a Nationals fan, you probably have a lot to say about some of those trades. There were two news that were going on the last week. So a few weeks ago, we got the news that Luis Ortiz, a pitcher from the Guardians, was placed on the administrative list for what seems to be gambling. And then people were looking at a certain percentage of his pitches were bad pitches immediately, like when his outing started. So people kind of took in track of patterns of that. Now it got worse, and then we'll talk how this is impacting more of the trade deadline. But we did find out that Emmanuel Clase, the stud closer for the Guardians, he's now on administrative leave for gambling. So. And you can find this all on Twitter or on YouTube. But it was something like apparently his first pitch this year, about 17% of his first pitches were uncompetitive pitches, versus something like 5% last year. So it is interesting. It is one of these things of you're told I guess when you're told in spring training you can gamble on certain things. This just seems weird. But what are your thoughts on this whole thing of players potentially gambling or like adjusting their strategy in relation to parlays and stuff?
I feel like once Pandora's box opened with, all of the gambling, you are going to see situations like this. I mean, indeed, we've seen this in the NFL as well, where some players have been suspended for gambling. So I feel like
someone from the Lions, I think,
yes,
it was from the receivers.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I felt like it was only a matter of time before it was going to come to baseball. So you're going to see more situations like this. That stat that you just ran, 17% this year compared to 5% last year. Yeah, that's sus. Like, to say the least, that is very suspicious. And it looks like, indeed, if I read correctly, it doesn't look like that's the only situation in Cleveland. There were other pitchers that might be.
There's two that we know of. There's two that we know of, Ortiz and Clase, but other pitchers might. But now we have a track record of, let's take a look at their first pitches in each outing and see if there's a pattern.
Right. No, I agree. And you're probably going to keep seeing that now throughout Major League Baseball. Again, once you open Pandora's box, I think something like this was only a matter of time before it was going to happen. But that's really my main thoughts on that. You just saw the trade deadline literally just not even an hour ago, both the Phillies and Mets making some pretty big moves here. The Nationals, of course, they traded Rosario to the Yankees. They just traded a couple relief pitchers today to the Angels. By the way, I don't really know why the Angels are buying this year, but hey, whatever. I thought the Nats had an okay return there. The interim GM, I think, is doing a fairly solid job since coming in after Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez both got let go. And you also said it. It was pretty quiet on the hot stove. Now things are really heating up, especially since the deadline is tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I think before we talk about the trade deadline, so I just want to do a few last points. Clase was someone that was potentially on the trade market, and he is a controllable reliever, and he is one of the better guys out there. The Guardians could have easily gotten a hole. I mean, if you look at some of these guys, like the Mets traded 3 prospects, including 2 top 20 prospects, for Ryan Helsley from the Cardinals, and then the Phillies traded 2 top 100 prospects for Joan Duran. I mean, it's probably going to be annoying for you as a Nationals fan, because the Mets went out and traded for Gregory Soto, who can be good, can be wild occasionally. Later on, I'll talk about the Orioles' return and my thoughts on the package they got back from him. But then you go out and get Tyler Rogers, which I thought they kind of overpaid earlier, but then Drew Gilbert, they wanted a center fielder, but Drew Gilbert is seen to be close to the majors, but yet they were trying to get there, and they still might be trying to get a deal done with Luis Robert Jr. or Cedric Mullins. I think that's going to be the next thing on their list. But Drew Gilbert was not mentioned as someone to go after, so I'm guessing he was someone that they were not going to protect from the Rule 5. Blake Tidwell, another high-end pitching prospect, hasn't been good in AAA. Jose Butto. These are, again, so that's 2 top 15 prospects, and Jose Butto, who's been a good but not great reliever for the Mets. You go get a rental and Tyler Rogers, who's been solid, 1.8 ERA for the Giants. By the way, both Tyler Rogers and his twin brother were traded.
Yep.
Yeah, and then Tyler Rogers' brother was traded to the Pirates for Ke'Bryan Hayes, which that seemed like a very small package to get back.
Seems like a salary dump for the Pirates, considering how much team control he has. He's very good defensively. Offensively, he's not where he used to be, but I feel like if you're trading someone like that to a division rival, you'd want a little bit more back.
Yeah, and then also, like, so you look at the Mets back end of the bullpen, you already had Edwin Diaz.
Yeah.
Now you got Ryan Helsley, who is a rental, but now you got Ryan Helsley and Edwin Diaz in the 8th and 9th spot, and then Tyler Rogers and Gregory Soto in the 7th inning. That's a really good, like, that might be like 6 innings. If you don't have a lead after 6 innings, you're screwed.
Yeah,
like
100%.
And then the Phillies, Duran, I mean, I understand that Romano was a bit of an issue for them. So Duran, they have until 2027. I thought this trade package, because I know the rumors were they were trying to get Andrew Painter from Minnesota, but when you see it, 2 top 100 prospects, you can't be mad at that. Minnesota looked they seem to be in a wild card race, but then they're selling. Griffin Jax is another guy. Their 8th inning guy that more than likely is going to be a trade chip for them. And I mean, it's a lot of you're seeing a lot of relievers like Caleb Ferguson. The Pirates traded him to the for the Mariners for Jeter Martinez, and then like you mentioned, Luis Garcia and Andrew Chafin to the Angels for Jake Eater and Sam Brown. The Rockies made a trade, which I was a little surprised they made a trade, even though the record says they should be more active. Tyler Kinley to the Braves.
And just real quick on that Nats trade, the fact that they got any sort of value for those 2 pitchers is a win in my book. Again, I really like the moves that the front office, or the quote unquote new front office, has been making since the firing of Mike Rizzo. Obviously, they're going to do a full search for a new GM once the season is over, and I think there's going to be some fairly good candidates for this position. But I like the deadline they're having so far. We still have to see, though, Adi, what happens with Kyle Finnegan. I think he's kind of tanked his value a little bit this year. He hasn't been as good as he was last year. I think they can get an okay return, but it wouldn't be as good as it was last year. And then Mackenzie Gore, you can listen. I only do it if you get a can't refuse offer. Otherwise, there is no reason to trade him. That is a low-end number 1, high number 2 on a contending team. That's my opinion on the Mackenzie Gore situation.
Yeah, and then a few other trades. Tampa Bay traded Danny Jansen for an infielder from Milwaukee. They traded for a catcher for Matthew Etzel. The Yankees made a few trades. They went out and got Rosario from the Nationals. They got McMahon from the Rockies, and then they got Slater from the White Sox. So the Yankees seem to be trying to get value, essentially, because they got some guys. Slater and Rosario are good against left-handed pitching. We talked about the Ke'Bryan Hayes trade. We talked about Helsley.
What do you think? What else do you think the Pirates do? Do they trade David Bednar? Do they trade Mitch Keller? They got to tread very carefully on those 2, because they have a GM that a lot of fans don't like, and I think for good reason. And of course, the owner, we don't even really need to say that, just because they can't sell the team at basically every game at PNC Park here. But I think those 2 are the big ones now for the Pirates.
Yeah, no, yeah. I know there's that story with Brian Reynolds, and how, like, he he has like a list of teams that he will not be traded to, which is the Yankees, Mets, Blue Jays, Dodgers, basically your high income. It seems like the high tax states.
Right.
So I don't know if they're going to trade Brian Reynolds, Bednar. I mean, I feel like you have to listen at this point. Like if you look at the return that Helsley got, you look at the return that Duran got, you're looking at a return that some of these relievers are getting. If you are a team with a closer, and I don't know if the Athletics would trade Mason Miller, you could get a whole lot right now if you traded for Mason. If you traded Mason Miller right now, you could get a whole lot right now if you traded Bednar. I know the Giants are putting Camilo Doval, who was good for them a few years ago, on the market, high flamethrowing reliever. So I think I would hold off on trading Keller only because I want to see if I'm the Pirates owner, I want to see what Alcantara gets if he's moved. I want to see if they trade Dylan Cease if he gets moved. I want to see 2 or 3 of these guys because you got the offseason. You got Mitch Keller for next 2 or 3 years. So you could really jack up the price in the offseason for Mitch Keller. Bednar, it seems like maybe the price could keep going up, but right now it seems like it's a hot market for relievers, especially a closer like with Bednar's track record. I would trade Bednar for whatever I could get. I would hold off on Mitch Keller. And Brian Reynolds, it's just a weird situation. I would look at Dennis Cabrera, I think it was, one of their other relievers. I would start to look at some of their other options. Andrew Heaney, I would look at what you could get for someone like him. So really, it's just like Bednar and a few other pieces. Keller, leave him alone until the winter meetings, and then trade him then. Before we get to we'll get to the starters a little late. We'll get to the starters after this point. The Orioles, they made 3 trades with relievers. Brian Baker for Slater DeBrune, who was a 37th overall pick. I like that. He's kind of like a Corbin Carroll type player. That's what the scouting report says. Then you got for Gregory Soto, you have Wellington Aracena and Cameron Foster. Wellington Aracena is like a 21-year-old starting pitcher reliever type for an A-ball. Cameron Foster is an older relief prospect, but could be a good journeyman type for you in a year or two. And then for Dominguez, they went out, got the Blue Jays number 12 prospect who strikes out a whole lot. The walks are a little bit concerning, but there's still some good stuff. So I do like what Mike Elias has done with some of these returns. And you look at the Orioles top 30 prospects right now. It's now a whole lot of good pitching prospects. So before it was all hitting prospects. Now it's more focused on the pitching prospects, which is good to see. It is interesting, like the Orioles, they also have Cedric Mullins. So once we see if Stephen Kwan gets moved, you got Luis Robert Jr. getting moved. So you do have so there's some outfielders. I want to see what the prices are, but I do think Mullins has a chance of getting moved. Obviously, Josh Naylor got moved for about 2 prospects between the 10 and 20 range from the Mariners. So that's, if you want to know price point, what the asking price is for Ryan O'Hearn, that's basically what we're looking at. 2 in the top 10 to 20 range, or 1 in the 10 to 14 range. I would look at a high-end pitcher, like someone that isn't quite polished yet, but it's an A-ball and has good stuff, and you can still see him as a starter. If you could get that for O'Hearn, go ahead. If you can't, that would be really interesting. Like I talked to Mullins. I don't know if they trade Laureano. I think he's just too little lower on that list, in my opinion. Kittredge, the Orioles have already traded 3 relievers. I don't know if they trade a 4th, but Kittredge is someone to look out for. Other than that, I don't know if the Orioles have any other guys to look at. I don't think the Nationals have any. I don't think Alex Call or Jacob Young. I don't think you trade any of those guys.
No, I don't think so. I still think Kyle Finnegan has a shot at getting moved, but again, it's not going to be for the value that you would have gotten last year, in my humble opinion. And then, as I said, for Mackenzie Gore, I know his name is out there deep. They're at least listening to offers. The only way you do it is if you get a can't refuse offer. And I'm talking like multiple top prospects.
What about
back.
Mitchell Parker? What about someone like Mitchell, like DJ or Mitchell Parker or
one of Mitchell Parker? Like I can at least understand that. But Gore, like that's someone you can build your foundation around. Like that's someone who is at least a high-end number 2 starter, if not a low 1 in Major League Baseball. I'm not doing that unless you get an offer that includes like multiple top prospects. And I'm talking like, again, like potential difference makers. But I just don't know if they're going to get offered that. So again, they're still going to be like a little busy just because of where they are in the standings. But, they've made a couple moves already. There's still other moves. Like I'm sure Nathaniel Lowe's name has been out there as well, but I don't know if they're going to do that at this juncture. I just kind of focused on them finishing this disastrous season and then really figuring out who's going to be the manager and then the GM.
Yeah, and then I think we could talk a little bit about the starting pitchers. Obviously, we know that Dylan Cease, for some reason, is on the trade market. I think a team like Houston could potentially go after him. The only thing with Dylan Cease, here's the other thing. If I'm Dylan Cease, I'm getting traded. And I know San Diego's a great place, but the moment Dylan Cease gets traded, he's not eligible for the qualifying offer. So you also got to think about with someone like Dylan, if his market's going to be hurt by the qualifying offer, then he probably should get traded. Now, a team like the Astros who could make a run, I think that I look at it like you say Kikuchi, like how the Astros got a little desperate for him, and they traded for him knowing that he was a rental. Sandy Alcantara, he's always going to be on the market. I think he's going to get moved. I don't think Edward Cabrera is going to get moved. I don't think Yuri Perez is going to get moved. I think Alcantara, I'm 75% certain that guy is going to get moved at some point. It's going to be interesting what they can get for him. Obviously, you talked about Mackenzie Gore. And then Joe Ryan. Minnesota seems to be selling. I don't know if they sell Joe Ryan, but those are just a few of the names to look out for tomorrow in terms of the starting pitcher market. Obviously, Eugenio Suarez he got hit in the hand, but he seems to be fine. He's someone to look out for. And then there's also Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly, 2 rentals from the Diamondbacks. So tomorrow, if you thought this last hour or so was crazy, tomorrow could get really nuts depending on how active teams are. And honestly, it's good. It's good for baseball because How many times have we seen in like and especially in basketball, like how many times do we see like a whole bunch of these trades just happen every once, like it's coming in, and how many of these trades are in football? How many of these, like baseball it used to be like baseball is slower in the trade deadline. Now if we start to see teams being more active, that's great.
It's funny. You're kind of seeing that a little bit in the NHL. A lot of the trade deadline days have just been kind of slow, boring. But now that the cap is going up, I think you're going to start seeing NHL teams get even more aggressive in terms of trade deadline. So I feel like the NHL was kind of there with MLB Elite where it is a bit slower on deadline day. But I think that's going to change, and especially for baseball too. I think it's going to be pretty active tomorrow.
Yeah, and then the last story we're going to talk about today is still baseball related. Okay, so we know that the CBA will end after the 2026 season, and we know one of the big things is the salary cap. And we know that Manfred has been on this tour to try to sell the idea of a salary cap, and then Bryce Harper did not want any business in any of that.
Told him, well, we're not going to cuss on the show, but go look up the quote, people. Basically just told him to get the hell out, except he used an even meaner cuss word than that. But I get why he'd be frustrated by that. I get why all the big clubs would be frustrated by that. I will still always say I will believe it when I see it when it comes to a salary cap in Major League Baseball. I'll say this. There's definitely going to be a lockout of the 26 season. There's no way there's not going to be. I would be stunned if they came to an agreement before that. But I definitely think there's going to be quite a bit of talk surrounding it. But I'm not sure that Manfred is going to get his way here. I still think I'll believe it when I see it. But you have to agree that there's going to be a lockout after the 26th season.
Yeah, and again, like I feel like the salary cap. The scary thing is there's probably going to be another issue. It's like there's still more issues other than the salary cap that they have to address. I will say this: get the opinion with the salary cap stuff done now. If that doesn't work, just say, hey, we need this isn't going to work. We got 4 or 5 other issues that we got to address. Let's table the salary cap, or let's use one of those other issues, like for example, I'm sure like because teams like the Dodgers can defer a heck of a lot more money than teams like the Nationals or teams like the Pirates. Let's try to curb the deferred money stuff, and then essentially let's backdoor our way into a salary cap idea. But instead of saying here's a salary cap, let's just say we can't have, like, with deferred money, there's only a certain amount of deferred money that you could have per year, and you cannot cross that line. And so the idea is, all right, let's go to the deferred money. Let's go to the lengths. Let's go to the length of the contracts. Let's look at, and I get it. There's a financial advantage certain teams have, but I feel like the financial advantage is, all right, well, it's not payroll. It's basically the way we're run. We can hold money. We can hold money in escrow much better than other teams. Right. So we can hold that we can have that to our advantage. Like, you could set the salary cap at 300 or 305. Okay, cool. We'll just offer 15 years. We'll just offer 12 years. Like, we'll spread the money out. We'll defer the money because we still have that advantage. That I would rather do that. If you are going to do a salary cap, don't say the word salary cap. Just say, hey, look, financially, certain teams can compete with the Dodgers when it comes to deferred money.
Right.
Okay, let's talk to some of these teams that can defer more money and say, hey, let's balance out the deferred money situation. And then it's like, oh, and then you can kind of work your way. It's like, okay, now we're kind of building towards the salary cap, because if the Dodgers are now operating with saying that we don't have to, okay, there's a limit on the deferred money. There's a limit on the lengths. Okay, now maybe we could talk a bit more about the salary cap, or maybe it's like, oh, we kind of been operating as if there is a salary cap. We just haven't set the words salary cap. And unfortunately, I don't know the answer to this question. I don't know if salary floor and salary cap have to be connected with each other, or you can do a salary floor. Because my big thing is a salary cap will not encourage teams to spend more money. You're definitely trying to Dan Campbell some of these bigger market teams while also allowing these smaller market teams to sit on their you-know-whats and not spend money.
They'll just barely get over the floor. Like, say they're $1 over the floor, or they're like $1 million over the floor. Oh, we're good. We don't need to spend any more money. And they'll just sit there. And then with the teams that would spend up to the cap, they don't mind paying all that money for players. The Yankees, the Dodgers, I would put the Blue Jays up there. The Mets, of course, 100%. Those teams wouldn't mind. Like, they'll still be, especially the Mets, the Dodgers, and the Yankees, they'll still be 3 of the biggest spending teams in the league. But no matter if you have a salary cap or not, they're still going to spend all the money. That's just how their teams operate.
Yeah. And then last piece of news before we end the show, from Bob Nightingale, Shohei Ohtani just walked off the mound with the Dodgers trainer after throwing 6 consecutive balls and looking quite frustrated. Hopefully, that's not an indication of something that's going on.
Yeah, hopefully he's all right. Yes, we're hoping for the best there.
So,
and of course he's probably going to be pretty pissed off. He just threw 6 consecutive balls not over the strike zone. And then, Adi, just to end the show, you sent me this text message. I saw that brutal umpire call from behind home plate where a pitch went right down the middle. What are we doing here, man? Like that's the type of stuff that's going to get robo umps in here very soon. You can't miss calls like that.
Yeah, and I think I also saw a game. I saw a pitch today in the Orioles Blue Jays game today, where like if this was the strike zone, the pitch literally was like this, and it was strike 3, but it was like 9-8, bases loaded in the 7th inning, 3-2 count. If that was a ball, it's a tied game.
Yep,
it's a tied game, and who knows what happens after. So umpires, I just don't get it. Like and the thing is, I get it. Like if the ball kind of goes right to left and it ends outside the zone, that's a strike. I understand when the umpires call that a strike, but when the ball kind of goes left to right, but it doesn't go into the zone, it's still outside the zone. I don't understand why umpires don't get criticized more often than not. Or like why they're so scared of answering those questions. Because like I said, like the call in today's game, it was bases loaded on 3-2 count with 2 outs.
Right.
That's a ball. That should have been a tie. Again, that should have been a tied game, and whatever happens, happens. But again, it's just really annoying. So we'll be back around let's 10 days if all works out.
Yeah, our scheduling has been all over the map this last 4 to 6 weeks. So whenever we have free time, hopefully over the next week and a half, 2 weeks, somewhere around there, we'll hopefully hop on here. But that's life. Sometimes we've both been really busy.
Yep, and also we're gonna have some training camp news. So maybe next show will be about training camp. All right, we'll see you then.
See ya.